You know what nobody talks about? The quiet Sunday. While 115 million people are screaming at screens, painting their faces, crying over touchdowns scored by strangers, there's this entire population sitting in the silence of their own indifference. And they're not performing apathy. They're not being contrarian for social media points. They're just genuinely unbothered. Like watching the world lose its mind over something that registers to them the way competitive butter sculpting might register to you. Complete emotional neutrality. And here's the thing that makes people uncomfortable. They're not missing out. They're not broken. They're just wired differently. And that difference reveals something profound about how we experience belonging, identity, and the exhausting performance of caring about the right things. Let me tell you what's actually happening here, because this isn't about football. It never was. When someone tells you they don't care about the Super Bowl, what they're really telling you is that the frequency their nervous system operates on doesn't match the frequency everyone else is broadcasting. And in a world that demands we all tune into the same station, that disconnect feels like standing in a room full of people speaking a language you never learned. You can see their mouths moving, you can see the passion in their eyes, but the words don't translate. The emotion doesn't land, and somewhere deep inside, you start wondering if something fundamental is missing in you. But here's what people miss. Caring about sports isn't some factory setting the human brain comes equipped with. Your brain didn't emerge into consciousness pre-programmed to lose its mind when a leather ball crosses an arbitrary line. What's actually happening when people get obsessed with the Super Bowl is this incredibly complex psychological cocktail of tribal identity, parasocial relationships, and what psychologists call basking in reflected glory. Your brain literally gives you a dopamine hit when your team wins, even though you did absolutely nothing except exist on your couch in the right zip code. For people who don't care, watching this phenomenon unfold is like watching someone get high off a substance that does nothing for you. You're not immune, you're not superior. That particular key just doesn't fit your lock. And this is where it gets psychologically dense. There's research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology that found people have wildly different optimal stimulation levels. Some brains crave high-intensity, emotionally charged experiences. They need the chaos, the unpredictability, the emotional roller coaster of a game where everything can change in 7 seconds. But other brains find that same intensity genuinely aversive. Not boring, not unstimulating, aversive, like standing too close to a speaker at a concert. It's not that you can't hear the music, it's that the volume itself is painful. So when someone tells you they don't care about the Super Bowl, they might not be trying to be edgy or different. They might just be someone whose nervous system prefers lower intensity experiences. The chaos and emotional stakes of a 3-hour game with constant momentum swings genuinely might feel exhausting rather than exciting. And here's the part that hurts. Nobody validates that. Instead, you get treated like you're withholding participation, like you're deliberately standing outside the circle judging everyone inside it. But you're not outside by choice. You're outside because the circle's frequency makes your nervous system want to shut down. Let's talk about something nobody ever mentions. Humans survived as a species because we formed groups and competed with other groups. Sports tap into that primal tribal identity thing. The emotional response to my team won versus their team lost follows a lot of the same neural patterns as ancient in-group versus out-group dynamics. This isn't metaphorical. When your team scores, the same reward centers light up as when your actual tribe finds food or wins territory. It's evolutionary psychology dressed up in jerseys and beer commercials. But here's what makes this complicated. Not everyone experiences that tribal pull with equal intensity. Some people's brains just don't light up for sports teams the way they light up for other forms of community. They might get that same dopamine surge from book clubs or online forums about mechanical keyboards, or literally anything that doesn't involve watching grown men give each other concussions over an oblong ball. They're not rejecting community itself, they've just found it elsewhere, in spaces that don't require them to memorize quarterback statistics or debate whether that was actually a catch. In spaces where belonging doesn't depend on caring about the right outcome at the right time. And this is where the loneliness starts seeping in. Because the Super Bowl isn't just a game anymore. It's this massive cultural litmus test. It's the thing everyone at work will talk about Monday morning. It's the party you're supposed to want to attend. It's the shared experience that supposedly binds us all together. And if you don't care, if you can't force yourself to care, you start feeling like you're failing at being human in some fundamental way, like everyone got a manual you never received. And the worst part? You can't explain this to people who do care, because to them, it sounds like you're just being difficult, like you're choosing not to participate in something fun and harmless. They don't understand that for you, participating isn't fun. It's an endurance test. Let me introduce you to a concept that might explain part of this disconnect: locus of control. In psychology, this refers to whether you tend to focus your energy on things you can influence or whether you're comfortable investing emotionally in things outside your control. Think about what happens when you watch a game. You're screaming at a screen, you're manifesting a field goal, you're wearing your lucky socks, but none of it changes what happens on the field. Your team wins or loses based on factors completely divorced from your existence. Some people are totally fine with that. The emotional journey is the point. The investment itself is the reward. But others find that fundamentally unsatisfying. Not because they're control freaks or party poopers, but because their brains are wired to seek agency, to invest energy where effort creates direct outcomes. For them, spending 3 hours emotionally invested in something they cannot influence feels like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. It's not entertainment, it's just exhausting. And when you try to explain this, people look at you like you've just told them you don't believe in having fun. But you do believe in fun. You just define it differently. You find joy in things where your hands can shape the outcome, where your effort matters. And then there's the elephant in the room nobody wants to acknowledge: overstimulation. Modern life already feels like you're being pummeled with notifications, deadlines, texts about TikToks you haven't seen, political dumpster fires, money stress, climate anxiety, and the endless scroll of everyone else's curated existence. For a lot of people, the Super Bowl is just another thing trying to hijack your attention and emotional energy, another demand on a nervous system that's already running on fumes. And when you're already overstimulated, when you're already drowning in the noise of existence, the idea of voluntarily adding 3 more hours of sensory assault starts to sound less like fun and more like self-harm, especially for people psychologists call highly sensitive. And that's apparently 1 in 5 of us. For them, Super Bowl parties aren't celebrations, they're endurance tests. The lights, the noise, the overlapping conversations, the emotional intensity of everyone around them feeling things loudly and publicly. What's a party for some is a full-on assault on the nervous system for others. They leave those gatherings wiped out for days, not because they're weak or antisocial, but because their nervous system processes stimuli more deeply, more intensely, and it doesn't have an off switch. Here's another layer nobody talks about: uncertainty tolerance. There's research showing that people vary dramatically in how comfortable they are with unpredictability and ambiguity. Sports are fundamentally uncertain. You never know what's going to happen. That's supposed to be part of the thrill, the edge of your seat suspense, the anything can happen magic. But for people with lower uncertainty tolerance, that same unpredictability doesn't feel like excitement. It feels like stress, like holding your breath for 3 hours with no guarantee of relief. They're not enjoying the suspense. They're just uncomfortable the entire time. And when you combine that with the fact that the outcome literally doesn't matter to your actual life, sitting through 3 hours of manufactured tension for 0 payoff starts to feel less like entertainment and more like voluntary anxiety. It's the same reason some people love horror movies and others can't stand them. Different nervous systems have different relationships with stress and uncertainty, even when it's supposedly just for fun, even when everyone keeps insisting it's harmless. Because for some brains, it's not harmless. It's just stress wearing a party hat. And then there's the performance of it all. The Super Bowl isn't just a football game anymore. It's this massive cultural production. The commercials, the halftime show, the themed snacks, the Instagram stories, the entire circus. If football doesn't really do it for you,
All that extra hype just makes things worse. It's like being surrounded by people performing extreme enthusiasm for something you find completely random. And you're supposed to join in, to talk about the ads, to have opinions about the halftime show, to care about the score, to perform the right amount of investment at the right moments. And when you can't, when you won't, it starts to feel kind of fake. Not them, you. You start feeling fake for sitting there nodding along, pretending to care about plays you don't understand, about teams you have no connection to, about an outcome that will not change your life in any meaningful way. You end up watching everyone else get worked up over something you find totally arbitrary, and that weird disconnect can leave you feeling like the only person in the room who missed the memo. It's not just boring, it's isolating in a way that's hard to explain to people who've never felt it. It's not just boring, it's isolating in a way that's hard to explain to people who've never felt it.
Because here's what actually happens. When you're the person who doesn't care, you don't just miss the game. You miss the Monday morning conversations, the shared cultural references, the inside jokes, the bonding that happens when everyone experiences the same thing at the same time. And slowly, quietly, you start feeling like you're living in a parallel universe, one where everyone else is connected by invisible threads you can't see or touch. And the worst part? They don't even notice you're not part of it, because to them, caring about the Super Bowl is so default, so assumed that your absence doesn't register as a choice. It registers as a personality flaw. But let's be honest about something nobody wants to say out loud. Sometimes there's no deep psychological explanation. Sometimes people just don't like football the same way some people don't like cilantro or techno music or true crime podcasts. We've become so obsessed with pathologizing every difference that we forget humans just have different tastes. The person who doesn't care about the Super Bowl might be deeply passionate about Formula One or Olympic curling or literally anything else. And that preference doesn't need a neurological justification. It doesn't need to be defended or explained or apologized for. What I find most interesting is how uncomfortable it makes people when someone says they don't care about the Super Bowl. There's this immediate defensiveness, like you've insulted someone's mother, and that reaction tells you everything about how sports function as identity markers in our culture. When you reject the Super Bowl, some people hear it as rejecting them, their values, their entire social world. It's not actually about the game, it's about belonging, about shared experience, and maybe some anxiety that if too many people opt out, the whole thing loses its cultural weight, that the magic only works if everyone agrees to believe in it. But here's the shift. Here's where we stop treating this like something wrong with you and start seeing it for what it actually is. A difference, not a deficit. Your nervous system isn't broken because it doesn't light up for sports. Your brain isn't malfunctioning because it finds intensity exhausting instead of exhilarating. You're not emotionally stunted because you prefer investing energy in things you can control. You're just wired differently. And in a world that constantly demands conformity, that constantly insists that there's a right way to experience joy, being wired differently feels like failure. But it's not. It's just your frequency. So if you're someone who doesn't care about the Super Bowl, here's what I want you to understand. You're not missing anything fundamental about being human. You're not failing at connection or community or joy. You're just experiencing all of those things in ways that don't involve watching strangers throw a ball. And that's completely valid. You don't owe anyone your enthusiasm. You don't owe anyone your emotional energy. You don't owe anyone a performance of caring about something that doesn't resonate with you. And if this hit home for you, if you've spent years wondering why you couldn't just force yourself to care about the things everyone else cares about, know this. The world needs people who exist on different frequencies. Because if we all cared about the same things in the same ways, we'd lose the beautiful, strange diversity that makes humanity interesting. So let them have their Super Bowl, and you have whatever lights you up, whatever makes your nervous system hum instead of scream. That's where you belong. Not in the circle you were never meant to stand in, but in the one you build for yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only circle that ever mattered. If this story resonated with you, you are not alone. There are millions of us living on different frequencies, quietly building our own circles. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into the parts of human experience nobody talks about. And remember, you were never broken. You were just different. And different was always enough.